Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales. Welcome to the first episode of the week. One of two episodes this week. Maybe we'll do a third bonus episode for you. I'm trying to set that up, but we'll see, folks. I hope you've been enjoying all the shows that we've been doing. It's been great to be back. We've had some amazing guests, which has made it very easy to get back into the swing of things. Life has it's very busy lately between the kids and the new job and everything else, but I'm here to still showcase the best of what this industry has for you. And some of the best of this industry has for you is Contempo Specialty Packaging. Guys, you know them. They are a sponsor. They're one of my favorite sponsors because the packaging in this industry is not good. Contempo has beautiful packaging and they have 100% hemp offerings. My guest today knows a lot about hemp offerings. We're going to talk to him in a little bit about that. I've used that joke before, so if you're smart, you can figure it out. But as you can see, here is Contempo's 100% hemp offering. Very happy to see that. They have beautiful options for HRs. If you're a Delta 8 company, if you're a cannabis company, if you just want to sell stuff that looks very pretty, because you know what? Contempo also comes from the world of luxury items, right? They have a ton of experience working with over 40 years from the top brands in the world of fashion. And they've got about 4 to 5 years of cannabis experience working with some of the biggest companies in the industry, folks. Like I said, their packaging is beautiful. I love this. This is the pre-roll tin. I am a big fan of the tin, right? Slides open there. I'm going to accidentally open up the one that actually has my joints in it on camera one day. I mean, not like that's a big deal, but I like, and got folks, you know, I love this one, the single tin. They say it's for a vape cartridge, but come on, a gram joint, half gram joint right in there. That's nice. Slips right in your pocket. These are very, very fun packaging. So check them out at contempopackaging.com. That is contempopackaging.com. Tell them C-Lab sent you and tell them you want exactly what Todd said to do. All this packaging, this is exactly what you're for your product. Okay. All right, folks. So I've been back. We've done about, I got to get my guest up here. I've got too much scrap on the screen on my end. So we've done about 8, 9, 10 episodes, something like that. And we had a really good conversation with the CEO of Gramco and Greenpoint Research. Of course, I've known the guys at Greenpoint for a while now. They're, friends. I've known them since my days back doing Cannabis Dealmaker Summit. They were one of the first places I went when I didn't have a job. They, very nice to me, opened up their doors, opened up their connections and everything else. So I'm a huge fan of them. The person that I got introduced to was really cool. So not to keep him waiting any longer, but I want to share this story is all of a sudden. So I went to Florida State from 2004 to 2008. During that time, we had quarterbacks Xavier Lee and we also had Drew Weatherford. So my short time in finance, all of a sudden I get an email from Drew Weatherford, who is working in finance now. Didn't work out in the NFL, but he's crushing it in finance. So great job, Drew. Had a great conversation with him. Made the joke, I'm sorry, Florida State wasn't that great. I'm like, dude, I was a huge fan. So you're apologizing to the wrong guy. But long story short, when he found out that I was in cannabis, he introduced me to today's guest. So with that being said, because it's just one of the coolest stories, it's a nerd story just because I'm a Florida State fan. He was the quarterback when I was there. Please welcome my guest today, Light Townsend, the Chief Legal Officer of Greenpoint. Light, thank you for joining me today, man.
Thanks, Todd. That's a hell of an introduction, and Drew's a great guy. I'm glad he was able to connect us for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy just having him call me up, and then he introduced me to you, and it was just, meeting you and the Greenpoint team. I really just started liking what you guys were doing right off the bat. And I think it might have been the Florida State connection. But when I sat in your offices when we first met, like I just felt like I was in a place with people who knew what they were doing. I remember we went down, we were at that CBD Expo and like we walked around and I remember having the same opinions on everything there. And we don't need to go into those opinions, and that's when I kind of like, it was you and a few of the other guys on the management team there. I'm like, all right, these guys know what they're doing. I get it. Like I need to watch them. So, you were on, you were an early employee there at Greenpoint. Just tell me a little bit about the early days before we get into, the things that you're doing now, because clearly you're doing much bigger and better things.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again. It was, the industry's come a long way. And so I feel like Greenpoint's been trying to ride those coattails and lead from the front somewhat as best we can inside of him. I made the jump over to Greenpoint. I met the guys originally in law school at Florida State, like you said. And before that, I was a management consultant, and I was thinking about, what are some industries that I think I should point my career at after all this stuff, and thinking about the law and thinking about cannabis at that time, and this emerged as a great opportunity with David and Mike and Jordan, and so we've been hard at it now. We've had taken our lumps and had some success. So excited about the future of the industry, both here in the state as nationally and internationally.
So, I get to do I've never really due diligenced you to in a way, right? Like we met, we became friendly, we've talked, we've opened up the network, but for this show, that's what I have to do, right? To see the things that I need to talk about, or at least that's what I tell people I do, so they understand the craziness that is this show. But dude, like I never actually realized how impressive you were until I started going into your bio. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, how have I ever been able to hold a conversation with this guy? But you have a deep, you have a deep background in insurance and finance, and you've written a lot of regulation and things like that. So, when I look at you, you're, a younger guy. The guys come from Florida State. I feel like I got a similar education, I'd like to think. And then I see you doing all this stuff. What now I've got to ask, because a lot of people, especially in the nascency of this industry, if they come from established backgrounds, you can continue down that path and just ride on the success that you've had. And there's a little bit more security in it, even though, you can go down an entrepreneurial path or anything else. But what made you want to bring your abilities and knowledge into the cannabis space? Was it the fact that you were kind of, you got your beak wet helping with the insurance and writing? I know that I can't comprehend it, but the process with the Deepwater Horizon thing, you're like, hey, I have the opportunity to make sure that this industry gets done correctly and kind of help shape that. I'm just curious, what made you pick cannabis of all places?
Well, so talking about the Deepwater Horizon thing, before law school, I was had some entrepreneurial bend to myself then, and had a good partnership with a group out of Tampa where we were making BP oil spill claims for business owners. We had some success there, and got to meet a bunch of business owners and work with them to make those claims under that program, and realized that I've got some knack at building processes, systems. Both inside of the business that was doing the consulting work, but also before that, I was working as a management consultant on business systems, so making businesses more efficient. So, thinking about that, and then looking at the future, my dad's an attorney, thought that I wanted to be an attorney and help small businesses out. That was my original thought for law school. Things progressed from there. I met David and Jordan while in law school, and David kind of helped me see the light about, hey, this is a real market opportunity, both cannabis generally, but more specifically hemp, thinking about all of the different applications. So we've been working and moving forward on trying to be a part of the industry and work in the industry, both as consultants and then as our current business, Greenpoint Research, to do the farming and do the actual work to produce these products. The insurance side of things is I guess another nerd moment. It's been something that I was excited about. In law school, I got the chance to work with a Fortune 500 company in their legal department, and part of what they had was an insurance wing. And I had never heard about a company that is not an insurance company owning its own insurance. And so the insurance and warranty products that we're talking, kind of the impetus to this discussion was a kernel from an idea that I had about, being an attorney and helping businesses, and what it would look like as an attorney helping businesses start their own insurance companies to underwrite some of the risk that they see. There's a good overlap, thinking about some of your past guests. There's a good overlap with the the high THC side of cannabis, where there's some tax issues around what can and cannot be deducted. I went and got my tax LLM, which is a specialty in tax law, after Florida State, before being full time at Greenpoint. And so, I was thinking that as cannabis continues down the road towards federal legalization, there's going to be a time frame where businesses in cannabis are going to need some help, both with systems, but also with trying to implement some type of insurance to get regular insurance products that they don't have access to, and also still be able to deduct those as a regular business expense outside of some of the other things that they can't normally deduct.
So, I mean, you're getting deep into areas that I love hearing about because, like you said, as we march forward towards federal legalization, or even just developing what the states have in place further, so cannabis companies can act, like you said, as normal companies or as agriculture companies, or as freely, not as freely, but more freely as a company like Greenpoint does on the hemp side of the fence, right? So let me ask you a question. As the chief legal officer amongst a group of attorneys, so which must be crazy because I feel like you've got a bunch of little critics that might just kind of be like, have you ever thought of, dude, okay, I got this one. You go do your job. Remember, this is what I
Everybody
focus on
definitely
every
has an
day.
opinion, that's for sure.
What are you dealing with essentially figuring out this newer world where it's like, how do we make these programs that are available to normal businesses feasible for cannabis in a legal way? Or are you dealing with a lot of stuff that's already in place, or is it a combination of two? Because I feel like just given your background and the conversations we've had, like your specialty is figuring out how to create a new thing and make it where people from the outside regulating are like, yeah, we're good with that. Let's do it that way.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really is a translation of the regulations and the laws that we're running up against as a hemp company into best business practices. So, how do we make sure that our our biggest partner, which is the government, feels good about our business and can continue to have confidence that we're doing the right thing throughout all the different steps that take our product from seed or juvenile plant through the farming process into consumer packaged goods. Yeah, I think the way you've put it, yeah, trying to translate a lot of those things and help, because it's so new, help regulators and help legislators say, look, this is very similar to other things that we already have in place. Hemp and cannabis is an agricultural product. We should treat it similar to an agricultural product. And the way that the different supply chains work inside of corn or soy or any of those other large ag commodities is how we should be thinking about hemp and cannabis moving forward. And so, yeah, that's kind of been the biggest overlap for me is figuring out how do we take the best from these other places, these other types of agricultural businesses and businesses generally, and translate them to make sure that we're compliant and inside of Greenpoint.
It's interesting because when a lot of people talk about cannabis and the way to regulate it, a lot of people are quick to point out alcohol, but I feel like it can't be very similar to that. You talk about doing it from an agricultural standpoint. When you are looking at other places that exist, are you pulling mostly from agricultural models, or are there other regulated industries like alcohol or pharmaceuticals that you're looking to as well as you start to look at the things that you're doing?
Well, the regulatory frameworks that are already in place with like the FDA or any of the insurance provider offices of insurance or the USDA, we have these regulatory frameworks that cannabis fits into. Really, it's just identifying, hey, look, this is similar to X, whether it's a row crop being grown for fiber hemp or things that we're doing with an oil crop. You know, the the regulatory framework is already in place. It's just making sure that we're kind of raising the flag and saying, hey, look, we should be thinking about this the way that we already think about these other products. In thinking about high THC cannabis, there is some more controls that probably are going to be put in place. If you think about the regulatory bodies that could possibly come in a federal legalization standpoint, FDA, ATF, they have regulations that already control commodities that are controlled. You think about drugs or supplements or anything like that. Alcohol is another great example. Tobacco, they have regulations that they've already implemented. Cannabis should be held to the similar guidelines. That's probably the fastest way to get federal legalization pushed through is say, look, we already have the framework. We're just applying it to this new product that's coming out.
I had that same conversation with David, and where he sold me on Delta 8, which I was not a fan of until I spoke to him. So that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay to change your opinion when you have new information. That's perfectly fine. So, I was very against Delta 8 because to me, I thought it was is people trying to skirt the rules. And, he kind of turned it around. He's like, hey, what if this showed the government, you know, the path to federal legalization? What if this was the product? What if this helped us figure out the framework and everything else? And that's how he turned it around to me. So, as someone in your position, obviously, I feel I know which camp that you're in, but do you think that it's going to be products like Delta 8, or is it just going to be a myriad of different cannabinoid based products that are going to help push what we all call adult use or recreational through, right? Because cannabis, I guess technically you could say it's legal in the form of hemp, right? It's the same shit. It's just how much THC is in it, and that's where we delineate the difference. But at the end of the day, it's basically the same plant, right? And these are all my words, not yours. But so what is going to be the thing or the markets that you think will bring on the conversation about just opening up the recreational market? And will companies long term be able to play in both areas without having to have some kind of corporate structure that keeps them kind of siloed? I'm curious to know, like, will we have someone who can just be a cannabis company that runs the gambit of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would hope so. Again, thinking about large scale cannabinoid production, THC is a cannabinoid, and being able to produce it at a low cost margin to implement into supply chains for low cost products for consumers is kind of the name of the game. That's what we should be focused on. That part of Gramco and part of Greenpoint's mission is to do that, is to have low cost cannabinoid ingredients. We're agnostic as to what you're using them for as a
Hmm.
manufacturer or a CPG company. But being able to provide those to groups to figure out, hey, this is the best idea that we can get, and consumers are interested in this. And whether that's a high THC product, a high CBD product, or any of the other minors, I think that pushing forward through, what is this? This is a farming commodity. You're farming cannabis. The end use should probably be regulated similar to the way other end use products are. But if you're a tobacco grower, you have certain regulations you have to meet, but then you hand it off to a cigarette or a
Hmm.
cigar manufacturer, and they have different regulations that they need to meet. And so hopefully the trend is towards that type of regulatory apparatus where farmers and agricultural entities that are doing a lot of the processing are held to the same standard as other agricultural products. It's when you get closer to the consumer that some of those more onerous regimes kind of step in and make sure that the consumer product, that whatever people are utilizing, meets those same specifications as other products that are kind of like kind.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you put it that way. And you talk about tobacco and obviously the ingredients for alcohol. It's not like you're just growing grain alcohol out in the fields. It comes from wheat and barley and everything else like that. I think I don't know if cannabis seems to be different because you can technically, pull it off straight off the plant and it has its psychoactive abilities. I certainly feel that a company like Greenpoint in the future, when this is federally legal, that you guys should be able to participate, like you said, cannabinoid agnostic. So if there's a company and you as the manufacturer wanted to make, full spectrum THC products, Delta 9, right? That it's a line in your catalog of everything that you do. And that's really what the cannabis industry ultimately will boil down to once it's federally legal, once it gets commoditized and commercialized and everything else, is you guys are going to be just like any other agriculture. I don't mean to like degrade it, but like another agriculture, we sell the commodity of cannabis in any form that you can leverage it in.
Yeah, I mean, we're proud of what we do. We're proud of the farmers we work with. It's definitely not a degradation moment, thinking about, farmers feed the world, and
Hmm.
we're happy to be a cyclical product that farmers can utilize as part of their rotation to help, continue to keep that farm managed and full, and producing products that people want to consume, whether it's peppers or um, corn or soy or tobacco or cannabis.
I mean, let's go into speculation mode here. Down the road, obviously, Florida has a very big farming community. there's a lot of cattle farms and stuff in the middle of the states, but obviously we're known for our oranges and other citrus and things like that. Do you think there will be a time 10, 15 years from now that, cannabis will be just an outdoor, maybe not outdoor here in Florida, but that, farmers will have a section of land geared specifically toward just hemp or cannabis and, along with the other things that they grow, or they're not multi-product farms and I'm just picking out the farms I see in my kids' books because, they make you think that they grow everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening already. We interact with farmers that are growing specifically hemp out in their farms, and we interact with farmers that are using it as a rotational crop. Depending on the type of farm that it's transitioning from, is really going to be the kind of the threshold issue about, hey, should we grow hemp here? How do we grow hemp here? What are the water requirements, soil? Getting down into the weeds of things about figuratively and literally, with the farmer about how they actually would pull that off. So yeah, that's all part of what we do at Greenpoint, and I think as an agricultural state, it's definitely going to be hopefully it's going to be something that starts to inch up on total acres produced over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and becomes one of those top 10 commodities that Florida is pushing out.
I mean, I hope so too. It's funny, as I asked you that question, I'm like, idiot, most commercial farms focus on something that they specialize in. The only ones that grow everything are the ones in the children's book and you've been reading for the past, two and a
It's
half
actually
months.
it's funny you say that. Florida is a large specialty crop state, and so there is a large rotational kind of focus for groups to say, I'm going to grow peppers, and then I'm going to grow squash, and then I'm going to grow these different types of products in a rotational manner. And so, no, you're absolutely right. Florida is kind of, we think. I'm seventh generation Floridian, so I'm kind of biased towards the state. Like, I grew up here, family's from here, but Florida is really poised to be a production standard for total acres produced in the nation, because we can grow a couple times a year. While people are sitting under snow and
Hmm.
and sitting around a fireplace, we can have producing fields. And so it's just finding the right outlets for those field products, and finding the right farmers that we can all work with, and are willing to grow cannabis.
It's funny to get on that train there. It's yeah, I live off of probably shouldn't say it on the fucking internet, but I live close to one of the farms that you guys had, right? And I remember my wife saying about wanting to take my daughter to a farm, and we're driving down 441, and I'm like, this is all farms. She said, "What do you mean?" I'm like, These are all farms." I'm like, "What do you think? Where do you think we live? Like all this land, these are all farms." I'm like, "They're not all like the ones in the kids' books." Like, I'm like, "They're growing stuff there. They're growing stuff there." Like, we drove by yours. I'm like, "They're growing hemp there." Like, these are farms. You can take them anyone you want here. It's really how funny. Like, we all have this image of like, I guess the children's books growing up.
Yeah, it's been great. My background, my dad it was grew up a farmer, and it's been great to kind of get back to those roots somewhat, talking to him about ag production, and I business consulting, and going to law school and things. You don't get really into the
It,
specifics about how all that stuff works, and so it's been great to as the business has grown, get more knowledge around all of that stuff.
No, and it's crazy. I mean, that's the one thing I really love about both the hemp and the cannabis space is that it is bringing to me, I mean, we can get into, I don't want to get into politics and like preaching and everything else here, but our country is great when we made shit here, right? And agriculture is a very big part of this country and it's a very big part of this state, right? So the one thing that I love about what our industry is doing is because you can't really, I mean, maybe finished product with hemp when we get into building materials can be exported from elsewhere. It's probably not going to be the best, right? But, and I doubt that's even going to happen, but because cannabis is a crop and it needs to be consumed within a certain time of it being grown and everything else, it is bringing a reignited energy into agriculture here. And I think there are a lot of people that went into traditional business that are getting into this industry and they're getting a taste of that agricultural side and they're like, oh shit, this is fun. Like this is better because I get to use what I know. I don't have to go into a fucking cubicle every day. I don't have to wear a pair of fucking slacks every day. I get to, like, I was talking to Brady Cobb, right? Who I'm sure you guys know. And I remember him saying, he goes, dude, when I'm on a rough day, I go up to the farm, I put earbuds in and I go trim. He goes, I fucking love it, right? So I think that's one of the coolest things. And that's why I love hearing, like, you who went down a formal kind of law school, which is, suits and business and a lot of books and everything else. It's got to be really nice experience this other side where you get to bring your legal knowledge and you get to kind of look at the land, trying to figure things out and let that inspire you, but you also get to experience this other side where it's not just within the, and I don't mean, I'm gonna like stereotype here, it's not within the walls of the marble offices and mahogany and everything else like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a callback to small business. You know, you're talking
Yeah.
about, the country was great when we made things. That's what all farmers are really. They're small businesses, and well, some of them are significantly larger. Thinking about some of the
They
big farms,
were
but
small businesses at one point.
yeah, but it really is. It's been great. I've always, as a consultant, I always thought, I wanted to help businesses. I want to, see how we can, generate more profit for people. More profit means more jobs. And that was kind of a focus earlier in my career, and it's really kind of a similar type of focus with Greenpoint and with hemp. Just being able to bring a new commodity to farmers that might be looking for something, and then some of the larger farms to say, look, this is an additional revenue stream that you can add in that can positively impact your bottom line. Again, more revenue, more farms, more jobs, more things to we have a saying, all ships rise with the tide, and that's how we see this industry kind of impacting agriculture generally.
No, that's great. So, I told this to David when he was on the show too. Like, because I get very involved in the high THC side of things and the recreational world, and since C Lab has gone more national, we've had other markets that we talk to. I tend to be more ignorant about the CBD world, right? And about the hemp world, you know, how are those industries doing? I feel like we're at a point now, and you guys probably see it firsthand being on the manufacturing side that a lot of bad players have gotten wiped out, the people that shouldn't be here. A lot of more brands are being taken seriously. And I'd love to see us inching further and further towards industrial hemp. How's Florida doing, as a hemp market down here? We've got somehow we fell ass backwards into a $1.2 billion medical cannabis market with only 450,000 people. So that's incredible. Is our hemp market thriving as well too?
Yeah, so you've got a lot of great consumer packaged goods products, and when we think about the hemp market, we break it down in kind of three legs of the stool. The fiber, feed, and then oil. Our focus for the main part has been oil crops. So again, being cannabinoid agnostic, we're trying to grow crops that produce the most amount of oil for us to be able to get those ingredients out and get them in the hands of manufacturers who figured out the best type of product for consumers. So you think about some of the My CBD, Your CBD Store, Green Roads. There's a lot of great companies that are consumer focused here in the state, and I think they're helping drive production and things here in the state as well as nationally. Those consumer, you got to sell your product to somebody, and so
Hmm.
the way that a lot of hemp companies have come to fruition is they've been vertically integrated. They offer their own products, which is something that we do, but more so, it's getting those products that have the best ingredients, to consumers in the delivery method that they prefer. And so there's a lot of great companies that are doing that today that, we're working with, and there's a lot of ones that we're not working with that we hope to work with in the future.
Nice. So let's go back to this insurance thing, right? Because I want to talk to you more about that, mainly because I actually have a friend who just reached out to me about crop insurance anyway. So, but on
Okay.
that note, what is right now as far as like traditional business, if you're a traditional farmer versus a hemp or even a psychoactive cannabis farmer, what is available or not available to you that these other farmers have as the advantage? And where is the opportunity in getting it to them? Because I know a lot of things on the financial side, like, and I don't know how much it is for the hemp industry still, but obviously cannabis companies suffer from loss of payment processors, multiple payment processors, can't use credit cards, can't access the financial system. Banks don't love holding their money, right? I know some credit unions and stuff have come around, and this is the same for a lot of hemp companies too. They're the marketing restrictions and everything else. I know that even people who happen to have their name on a license have a hard time getting mortgages and stuff like that. We're all in this together, and kind of sucks more for the hemp companies because technically it's legal, right? There's regulations around it. But, as far as insurance goes, because your crops are your livelihood, especially everybody who grows out in California understands that with the wildfires. What are they not have access to, and what does the future look like there?
Yeah, so the federal crop insurance program is available for hemp companies and hemp farmers in certain states. And Florida is not one of those states currently. It's going to be here, I believe, either 2022 or 2023. We're going to have actual federal crop insurance for hemp products and hemp farms. I know that in Colorado, Oregon, some of the states that were able to jump onto the hemp train early, they already have crop insurance there. From an insurance perspective, just generally speaking, one of the things that has been interesting for us is looking at products liability insurance. It's very, very expensive. Just because, again, I think there's the cannabis premium associated with any type of insurance line that,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's hemp, still something that insurance companies are wary of. So yeah, from a farming perspective, the program that we're putting together kind of is a little bit different than federal crop insurance, and so it stands kind of beside. I call it like a bolt-on to the federal crop insurance. It's going to be available to Florida farmers here in the next couple of years. We're not trying to provide insurance, crop insurance. The federal crop insurance, they're going to always win from a price perspective, and they've got the most amount of coverage, generally speaking. And
Mm-hmm.
farmers should utilize that as best they can, and work within the system that is available to them under the certain types of coverages provided by federal crop insurance to get their crop covered.
So what's everybody doing till now, until those programs are available? I mean, are you just kind of risking it? I mean, that
Yeah, yeah.
sucks.
I mean, that's been one of the biggest things that we've gotten feedback from farmers that we work with. It's like, hold on, so I can't purchase regular crop insurance, and they're used to purchasing regular crop insurance on all their other products. And what happens if it goes hot?
Yeah.
Is there an insurance program for that? What happens if any of the regular risks that would come with growing products have not been really available for hemp farmers. And that was what we wanted to focus on, and at least try to spread the risk through the supply chain with this program that we're coming out with.
It's weird. Hemp is one of the only crops that I know of that you don't want it to be more potent because it's bad, right? If your strawberries tasted more like strawberries, it's not exactly a terrible thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point, and it is a concern, especially for farmers that are doing this for the first time.
Yeah.
Our director of agriculture ops says, look, if you put a hemp plant in the ground and you grow it for 2 straight years, it's going to go hot sooner or later.
Yeah.
And so hot being 0.3% THC, so it's really not something that's going to be psychoactive, but that's the line that's been drawn in the sand for us at a federal level, and that's what we have to be compliant with. So best farming practices, best genetics, those are all things that need to be thought about for farmers that are going to be getting into this type of production.
I mean, obviously I know that you can't take it and you can't do anything with it, but what happens to hemp crops that test hot? What do you have to do with that? I'm sure there's some kind of waste program or something. What are they doing? Are they just like getting rid of it?
Yeah, so most of the hemp programs that have been submitted to the USDA and gotten sign off from the USDA, they have some type of hot hemp disposal process, and it's going to be kind of specific on a state by state basis. But for the most part, like if it happens in Florida, it's being burned, so you're going to lose your whole crop associated with that planting.
Yeah, I'm sure it's disappearing in a series of small fires. I get it.
I don't know about that, but I know that they want it destroyed.
I mean, that's crazy to me that they're just taking, because there are so many other uses for this plant, obviously, as you know, and I know, and they're just taking something that was grown that somebody had put hard time and effort into, and they're just getting rid of it. That 100% it makes no sense. So I'm glad that things are going in the right direction. I'm curious to know, is something like that, or are there private companies doing that in the THC world as well? Because obviously there's a different risk there.
So sorry, doing what?
Doing any kind of crop insurance in the THC world.
Oh man, I don't think so. I'm not sure. A lot of the production is done indoors. Not to say that there's not crop insurance for indoor grows of other commodities, but you're thinking about the products that we're putting out. They're really tied to the genetics.
Yeah,
If to get into it, it's a warranty on our genetics are going to do what we say that they're going to do, and
got it.
if you buy like a lawnmower or any kitchen appliance or anything, you expect that thing that you bought to do what it says it's going to do, and there's a warranty associated with it not acting the way that it does, the way it's
Mhm.
supposed to. So that's effectively what we've tried to build, is to say, look, we stand by our genetics. We know that they're going to produce uh, certain uh, specific things in the field, and we know that they're going to do it in a certain time frame, and we stand behind that. And this warranty program that we're putting out is to cover in the event that, hey, there's a defect that just happened to be in that one plant, and we'll cover that plant just the same way that Maytag would cover a dryer that doesn't dry. It's the same type of deal.
I was leaning Craftsman for some reason, but I'll take Maytag.
Yeah, yeah. If your drill doesn't work, you just take the warranty, you get a new drill. This is effectively the same thing that we're trying to roll out. Again, as a way to, it's not the same thing as federal crop insurance, and until federal crop insurance covers all hemp farms, there's not going to be something that's like what farmers are used to. But this is a good program that kind of bolts on to a federal crop insurance program to cover specific items related to hemp and the way hemp is grown from our past experiences.
I mean, going back to what we talked about before, the reignition in farming and supporting farmers and everything else, I think this is a great opportunity because it provides people with, stability and security, right? And I think in what's going on in today's world, that's something that we all want. And like you said, farmers by nature are kind of forced to be entrepreneurs without the entrepreneurial side of the education, right? They get the farming side of the education. And again, I get my education from TV shows and documentaries and shit like that, so I could be completely wrong. But it seems like you kind of grow up on the family business and you learn the land and the farm, but there's still a whole true business side of it that you don't always get, right? So, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. You might just be really good at doing the stuff that you do. And for you to be able to come in and give somebody security and stability, I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of people to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, yeah. We think that it's going to be something that helps at least push forward the idea that hemp is a viable commodity, and people, farms that are growing whatever they're growing today should be looking at it as we want to be considered, in that rotation. There are farmers that have grown corn for 150 years, and that's all they do, and they're the best at it. If they're working on a rotation and they've got fallow fields, we think that hemp could fit in there. It's very similar to a lot of other products that farmers are already using. And, part of the reason that a lot of farmers won't get into hemp is because of this coverage lapse, this idea
Yeah.
that I don't have coverage from a crop insurance perspective. It's not something that I'm gonna take a flyer on and get into production. So again, thinking about what are the things that Greenpoint can do to help farmers utilize and get into hemp growing. This warranty program and standing behind our genetics, we think is a way to at least alleviate some of their fears.
Are you all focusing or starting to focus on industrial hemp? I know I think last time I spoke to you and everybody from Greenpoint, it's obviously a really much more expensive process than the things that are going on now. But I'm curious to know how much attention is being put in that area.
Yeah, we've had some great discussions with people out west. There's a lot of production for industrial. Thinking about again the different avenues, the fiber side and the feed side. There's a lot of fiber production that's happening out west in, I'm trying to remember the exact state, but we've had good discussions with people that are doing that, and they're working on it. It's not something that we're focusing on at Greenpoint at this moment. When thinking about some of the building materials, I think you mentioned, hey, we can
Hmm.
get fiber hemp pressed in the building materials. When that happens, Florida's a great place to roll out those products because because of some of the hurricane situation around regulations of what can be used in buildings. Again, thinking about these products and as they move into commerce, this is a great launching off point to say, it works in Miami, it works in Miami-Dade and Broward. It should meet all building specific requirements in other parts of the nation.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's, it's a funny thing. Like, God, I probably shouldn't even share this, but like, you know, you're from Florida. I grew up here. I've lived in South Florida since, after Andrew. I think I moved down here in 96, but I've been through a bunch of hurricanes and I've been through a bunch of bad hurricanes, right? But they're not as scary down here because we have the building codes, right? Our houses are bunkers, for lack of better terms. Our schools are bunkers, right? All these buildings are made out of pure cinder block on concrete foundations and all of that. So it's funny that you say, yeah, that Miami in South Florida is the perfect testing ground for these materials because if it make it here, it's going to be make it anywhere else in the world. So it's not even funny. I always forget when a hurricane goes elsewhere in our country and it's a category 1 or a category 2 and everyone's panicking. And I'm just like, that's category 2. That's like a Thursday afternoon here. What are you guys doing? Like I forget that not everybody has our building codes and everything else here. So it's very interesting that you make that point.
Yeah, and again, it's getting back to what we were talking about of taking the apparatus, the regulatory apparatus that's already existing, and just fitting that hemp product into where it fits. Again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel from a legislation and a regulation standpoint. We've got a lot of that apparatus already available to us. It's just making sure that we've got hemp and hemp products utilizing or being fit into those regulatory spaces that they best fit in and utilizing what's already there.
Very cool, man. Well, let me ask you a question. We talked about a lot of the things in the past and then the things that you guys are doing now. What does the future look like for you guys? What are some of the projects that are being talked about or anything else? I know that you guys said you're cannabinoid agnostic. You've got the Delta 8 thing going on with Gramco now. You've done the CBD, you've figured out how to make that in every way, shape, form possible. What are you guys working on going forward? Is it, you know, isolating different cannabinoids? Is it different delivery mechanisms? Is it, hey, we should get into industrial? I'm just curious to know what the future looks like from Greenpoint going forward, because I think you guys really have to use a terrible pun, a full spectrum of options ahead of you.
That's a good pun. That's nice. Yeah, you were excited about this warranty program. Thinking about the insurance side of things, we think that it's going to help farmers who are looking at hemp who wouldn't necessarily jump in to the business, at least get more comfortable with the risks associated with it. And so that's on the risk financing side of things, the insurance side of things. We're always working on bettering our products, making sure that our genetics are top notch and they're able to be used in our areas of operation, Southeast United States. And, focusing on some of those minors, it all starts with genetics. You can work with, crude oil and you can try and make some of the other minor cannabinoids. And that's always, through a chemical process that's possible. We think that we've got a great platform to be able to identify minors in, genetic runs that we do and be able to breed for specific things. We have a high CBG line of genetics that falls under that we're working with in the state, and will fall under this warranty program as well. Again, focusing on what's next in the industry that consumers are looking for. So being able to provide low cost ingredients for consumer brands to make sure that the consumer is really getting the value out of those products.
Have THC companies ever approached you guys about consulting on genetics, considering that you guys have an intimate knowledge of those, obviously in the low THC world, but I imagine it's a similar process from amongst the knowledge within your building?
Well, we've got great connections and relationships with people in the state as well as outside of the state that are in the high THC side of the business. It hasn't been something where, we're working on a genetic front. It's more so business practices and just general discussions there. Not to say that we wouldn't, be excited about that. It is kind of an interesting thing if you think about in Florida specifically. They have to have a low THC type of product,
Mm-hmm.
and dedicating very precious grow space inside of those facilities for low THC product, doesn't necessarily get the same, doesn't drive the same type of profit margin for that square footage at one of the bigger high THC producers. Utilizing a company like ours would be a good one to be able to say, hey, look, we still got the low THC offerings. It's grown from a cannabis plant with low THC, but they don't have to necessarily expend the overhead and the square footage. They can keep all that focused on what really is their main profit driver in the high THC side of things.
Makes sense. Well, listen, Light, I've had you for the better part of an hour. Dude, I appreciate all the insight that you've given me. I try to hang with you in the conversation and pretend I'm as educated as you. Like I said, we went to the same school, but I guess you went to class a lot more than I did, man. It's been a pleasure. Is there anything else that you want to get out there before we go?
Sure. Yeah, we have our warranty. We're going to have an informational webinar on September 22nd here at the end of the month about what are our offerings around the crop warranties, and how we can utilize that rolling forward. There's groups that are looking at 2022 and planning for their spring planting, and as we emerge out of hurricane season, we want to be considered inside of that. And so um, you know, September 22nd, we're gonna have a webinar on that. Other than that, I appreciate the time, Todd. Yeah, it's
Very
been
cool. Send
great.
us if you guys have a flyer or anything, send us to it. We'll post it on our social media too.
Okay, make sure we
So
do.
September 22nd, everybody. One last question before I let you go. Florida State opens against Notre Dame. They're plus 7.5. Who would you take?
Come on, you know the answer to that. Go Knowles, man. They're definitely gonna
God, I hope so.
win.
I joke. My daughter's name is Mackenzie, and Mackenzie Milton happened to be the quarterback at UCF where my wife went when our daughter was born. So I always messed with her and said that she named her daughter after her quarterback. So now that he's with the Knowles, I'm like, we got your quarterback, we got your favorite one. So I hope he does something for us, but we'll see, man. Light, it was a pleasure having you, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Todd.
Absolutely. And thank you. And thank you to everybody at home for watching. Of course, if you missed any part of this interview, you can check it out next week on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/elevate your grind. We'll be live again here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Was that like 10 a.m. Pacific? Facebook.com/Cannabis Business Group, LinkedIn.com @Cannabis Lab. We will see everybody tomorrow.